to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Owens here with Mr. Johnny Sobchak. Johnny, how are you?
I'm doing all right, Zach. How are you doing?
I'm good. Hanging in there.
Yeah.
As most people know, if you've listened to this the past couple weeks, basically since September, we usually start with a little football talk, as Johnny and I are both sports fans, but we're going to kind of bypass that because all three of our teams lost this weekend. So it's just going to – we had to acknowledge it to keep consistent, but we're kind of mourning right now. So we're going to move on quickly. It's too soon to discuss this. The top five heels are no longer the top five heels, unfortunately.
Not even top 10. Maybe not even top 15.
They're 14. Thank you very much.
Hey, it's brutal. Just brutal.
Minor setback for a major comeback. That's my outlook.
Better luck next year, boys.
Maybe next year. But our episode today is going to be a lot more positive than the tough football weekend that we had, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
We are back on track. No more movie drafts for the time being. We've got a new release to talk about and a pretty high-profile one at that. We're talking The Trial of the Chicago 7 today, Aaron Sorkin's latest for Netflix. So hopefully you all have gotten the chance to check that out over the weekend. We've also got a full slate of some really exciting news, I would say, some big stuff to break down. So it's gonna be a good one. And we have split opinions about this movie, so that always makes it even more interesting to hear both sides of things. But
yeah, we're not drafting movies this week. The movies are drafting us. Because there's
I like that.
A lot of new hits coming out. Not only on Netflix, which everyone can see with the Trial of the Chicago 7, but film festival things are going on. Screener things are happening. Zach got the opportunity to see Sofia Coppola's On the Rocks from Apple TV Plus. Do you like that one?
I did. That was very, very charming, very pleasant movie. I mean, when you think Rashida Jones and Bill Murray, I mean, that's a pretty not a duo that I would necessarily pair together in my mind, but they just loving both of them.
Nice.
And knowing how good they both are. They worked really well together, but I think we'll dive that review should be coming to the website in the next couple days. The embargo lifts tomorrow. Yes. So that'll be up there on the website, and I'm sure we'll probably, once Johnny gets the chance to check that out, we'll dive into that. Maybe next week's episode, because it's going to be a busy quadruple header potentially next week. But other than that, we also both got the chance to check out Minari from A24 that is coming soon. We saw it through the Middleburg, Virginia, right?
Yeah, Middleburg, Virginia, the film festival that they are doing, and they're doing it online, thankfully, and they're not geo-locking. So we were able to get some digital passes for that, essentially, and got that done. Lee Isaac Chung directed Minari, as you said, for A24, and I liked it a lot. I thought it was pretty great. Certainly one of the, in a year where movies have just been in tatters and new releases and all that kind of stuff. This is something you might, see at an art house or, one of the smaller, more low key A24 films. But I also think that this is going to be one that they're going to position and push for awards, probably the most of any A24 movie since Lady Bird, maybe. Trying to remember what they've had in the last couple of years, but this is one that I think the script is semi autobiographical. It's familiar but distinct because Lee Isaac Chung puts his own spin on it, and he draws from his own experiences and his own culture. And then just all the performances are great. Steven Yeun, who has really broken out since he left The Walking Dead a few years ago, just gives one of his best performances. And your favorite, you got to talk about
Alan Kim, the cutest little boy you'll ever see on screen. He has to be in every movie from here on out. He's the new face of Hollywood. That I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. That is
he was
the
impressive.
official ruling. Yeah, he was not only on top of being extremely cute, he was very good as well.
Convincing.
One of the I would say, I'm not going to spoil anything because like one of the major plot lines I don't believe was like hinted at in the trailer. But just like he was like a 7-year-old kid that was dealing with some heavy stuff and did a very nice job of handling that, as well as just like his shenanigans as being a little kid.
And I also got a shout out. I apologize in advance if I butcher this pronunciation, but Yoon Yoo Jung as the grandmother. She was excellent. I mean, that might be the best supporting female performance I've seen this year. She was just so funny, and also had some more emotional and dramatic stuff happening. And that's kind of what I liked most about this movie, is that it found a good balance between some humor and softer, like more warm moments, and then also like legit drama and kind of some heart-wrenching stuff too. So definitely check that out. There's no set release date for that yet, digitally or in theaters, wide or limited. So as soon as we hear about that, we'll have that for you. But that was great. And then I am finally going to get to see through Middleburg Film Festival tonight, One Night in Miami, and you have already watched that and got
that is correct.
Review.
I was able to see it through. I did the one through the Hamptons International Film Festival, because unfortunately not able to make it up to Film Fest 919 with their schedules, but it is playing there if you're in the Chapel Hill Triangle area in North Carolina. I believe there is at least one more screening that you can check out. But this is Regina King's movie, her directorial debut, about the real night but fictional account of Muhammad Ali, then Cassius Clay, Malcolm X, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke all coming together, sharing a hotel room and a night of heated discussion. So sort of imagining what happened then based on the events that happened before and afterwards, because nobody knows other than the people who were there what actually went down in that room. But pretty much everyone's lives changed dramatically afterwards. So I thought that was I wasn't like completely blown away with it, but I thought it was very good. It was like one of those, it's adapted from a play that was originally it was originally a stage play. So I think it does a nice job of like, it's very like play material, as in it's 4 people sitting in a room discussing things. Like it's a 1-act play, 90 minutes. But then to turn it into a 2-hour movie, they do a nice job of kind of sticking to that. You can tell that it was once a play, but then also like, okay, we're going to change it up and not just sit in this room the whole time. We're going to add in go to the rooftop or do a flashback or something else like this to kind of break up the events and make it a little more, I guess, exciting, rather than maybe someone who might lose interest by something that's sort of plain. So I thought it was very good. There were some really solid performances there. And like you mentioned, Johnny, there's a full review on the website if you would like to check that out as well.
Yeah, and with all these awards contenders popping up now and more people getting to see them, I plan on having a new edition of Johnny's Awards Radar coming up very soon. We'll have that on the website. I'm going to be talking about Minari, One Night in Miami from Regina King. And then on top of that, I will get to the trial of the Chicago 7. But despite my own opinions, I of course have those, but I have to look at it from the standpoint of what's available for the Academy.
Not what you would pick, but what you think would actually happen.
Yeah, I have to strategize and see what the field looks like and what the Academy has liked in the past from the people involved with these movies. So I think all these are legit in that respect, that they will get recognition in one form or another. So yeah, it's exciting. We're actually getting back to some real hard hitting, heavyweight movies here. So that's always exciting.
Definitely. And then, there was something else I was going to talk about. I was going to say that we'll have to file away your Dune Awards Radar piece and just republish it next
It's coming
year.
back, baby. Next summer, probably.
That way in advance. But before we get into the news, a couple more little brief topics. Jumping over into the world of TV. Johnny, I don't think you've seen it yet, but
I'm not.
Ted Lasso, I watched it this weekend. I watched it all. It's 10 episodes on Apple TV Plus, 30 minutes each. I watched it in 3 days. It's so good. So the premise, basically, I don't know if you've even seen the concept. I had not previously, but it's Jason Sudeikis. He is an American football coach who gets hired to go and coach a European soccer club in England.
That's amazing.
No experience whatsoever, doesn't know the rules of soccer or anything, but it's based on, he did 2 sketches for NBC Sports to like advertise for the Premier League back in the mid 2010s. And so they kind of spun it off from that into its own series, but it's so good, so positive. Like each episode feels like a warm hug in this dreadful hellscape that is 2020. Like it's funny, and there's like some like mean jokes and stuff, but it's like everything is like so uplifting and positive. And like the whole thing with him is that he's he's from Kansas, I believe, and he's like this good Midwestern guy, like, hey coach, how you doing? Like that kind of thing. And just everyone makes fun of him, and he just rolls right off his back. He stays positive all the time. He always like teaches everybody to believe and to never lose faith and stuff. And it's just like, it's just like a nice, enjoyable 30-minute dose of medicine that we all need to kind of get through this year. So I would definitely recommend it. I know Apple TV Plus, not a lot of people have that, but I would say that this alone, plus with On the Rocks coming up, is worth strategically burning your free trial if you have not done that yet.
Yeah,
and you're a soccer fan.
Yeah, I am. So that's cool. I forgot that is an aspect of that show. I've heard nothing but great things. So once I have, fortunately, I think I got a year of free Apple TV Plus when I got my computer last year for graduation. So yeah, at some point I'm gonna dive into that and actually get the app and watch On the Rocks and do Ted Lasso and do some of their other originals, because they do have some cool content on there. So that will be fun. Now, one last piece before we get into the bigger news stories. This is called Johnny's Conspiracy Theories. This is film adjacent, I suppose. Adele. Is there anyone who isn't an Adele fan? I mean, she's so damn good. But she's kind of finally coming out of her cage, and she's doing just fine, it seems. She's going to be hosting SNL this coming Saturday. And she's not the musical guest. She is just hosting. But her reawakening suggests that she has some stuff she's going to be wanting to promote soon. And there is a rumor, I can't remember which page or website was reporting it, but they were saying that her new album will be releasing on October 30th. That hasn't been confirmed or posted anywhere from Adele herself, but that should be fun. I mean, if you're into SNL still somehow and you want to watch that, I guess that's your out. She's an interesting guest to have hosted. I am not familiar with any of her acting abilities, so that could be fun.
See, I will say, obviously, I like everyone, I would love a new Adele album, but her Instagram caption when she announced this, I'm not completely sold, because she's like, I said something along the lines of, let me get the quote directly because I don't want to get called out for false information or anything. But she said, I've always wanted to do it as a standalone moment so that I could roll up my sleeves and fully throw myself into it. So that makes me think that she's not, in fact, getting ready to, like, she's not in the midst of a press tour or, like, obviously not with COVID, but like anything big production wise like that. And in the middle of COVID, Chris Rock has hosted, Bill Burr has hosted, and Issa Rae has hosted. So none of those necessarily have anything. It's not like they're out promoting something really, at least as far as I know.
Well, they were all related to different movies, right?
Were they?
I mean, Chris Rock was. But I'm trying to think who else. You said Bill Burr.
Bill Burr and Issa Rae.
Yeah. All I know is that Adele and her manager both said that her next album is coming this year. So unless that completely changed, there's no other reason that she would just be like, "Hey, let me pop on SNL."
Again, I hope you're right. I'm just trying not to get my expectations too high, I guess.
Yeah, that would be disappointing if she was just like, "Nope, let me do SNL," and then I'm just.
I just wanted to hang out with Pete Davidson.
Yeah, Pete Davidson. Yeah. Oh my God. But that could be fun. So, maybe I'll check that out. Maybe she will announce something on that show. Maybe she'll, say something immediately afterward. But that's just something to keep an eye on. And we all, of course, know Adele. If you're just a movie fan, she did the Skyfall theme from the James Bond movie. So be curious to see if she has any, maybe she's doing some sort of movie collab or show collab coming up. Because a lot of artists, when they have new content coming out, they go that route. So should be interesting.
I just hope there's something. I don't want you out here breaking my heart, Adele. Your music is supposed to heal hearts, not to break them. But all right, that's enough chit chat. Let's get down into the news of the week. I think one of the biggest things continuously that's been happening throughout the last week or so has been happening over in Liverpool and over here in Chicago. There's been a ton of exciting stuff revolving around the Batman. Johnny, you've been keeping up with it every step of the way, flooding our group message with all the latest leaked photos. Not leaked photos because it's in public. Different information, different set pieces. Talk to me about this. What's most exciting? What are you seeing here that really gets you ready to go for Matt Reeves as the Batman?
Yeah. So the DC fans and Matt Reeves fans and Batman fans have been going pretty wild on social media last week, including myself, because they did finally come out. Now, when they were filming before the pandemic really broke out and they had to shut down for months, they were filming in England. They were filming on location. They were in the graveyard, and some of those locations appeared in the trailer that we got in August. And once they shut down, there were reports that they're going to come back. Of course, they're going to get the rest of filming done, but it's almost going to be entirely on closed sets. It's going to be in studios. It's not going to be on location anywhere. They're going to have to take some locations and recreate them and build them, and it's going to be very, the safety is paramount. So they're going to make sure that all the extras are tested and things like that for big group scenes. And they were going to maybe reduce the group scenes somewhat in number. But it seems that we are going to basically get everything that we should have gotten if there was no pandemic at all, because they are now on location doing these huge shoots with tons of extras. Now, the very first thing that they filmed that a lot of people saw and were freaking out about was what looks to be the beginning of and or the ending of the funeral scene that we saw in the trailer, which seems to be for the Gotham City mayor. Now, a big part of why people were freaking out over this is because we got shots of Selena Kyle dressed up in some funeral attire. She looks amazing. She looks straight out of The Long Halloween. Her hat, her leather boots that are laced up to like the knee, her nails are long like a cat. And we also got a first look at John Turturro as Carmine Falcone. He looks, again, straight out of the comics, especially The Long Halloween, which is said to be a big influence for this movie. He has 3 scratch marks on his cheek, which are in the comic. They are actually from Selena Kyle, Catwoman herself. Whether or not he's aware that Selena is Catwoman and gave him those, it would seem unlikely because they are arm in arm and walking together. Selena Kyle, if you've seen The Dark Knight Rises or are familiar with her character more in the comics, she often she comes from a lower class, but she poses as a socialite, and she mixes and mingles with Gotham's rich and the people who are in the organized crime rings and things like that. So I'm sure we'll see lots of different costumes and kind of disguises. She's wearing a long straight hair wig in this, even though we know Selena and Zoe Kravitz herself has short hair in the role. And then, of course, we got Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne. He's driving an awesome Corvette. It's an old, I'm not sure if it's 1970s or 1960s Corvette Stingray. It looks badass. And then we also got, Zach, we got a new look at Colin Farrell's Penguin. Lots of up-close stuff, people zooming in, getting more looks at his face and his costume. What do you think of the prosthetics and makeup on that? Because we got to look at him in the trailer, this is the clearest glimpse and the most different angles and kind of profiles and things like that.
I just don't know why they spent thousands of dollars making him look like an average middle-aged actor. That's a joke. That's a joke. Calling out what you called out on Twitter. I know that you were enraged by that comment, but and a lot of people were, because this is not true. I mean, he looks incredible. The facial deformities, almost the excessive weight around his jaw, around his chins. It looks absolutely nothing like him in real life, and it's really, really impressive. And I mean, I am not like you, and to the extent of knowing all of the backstories in the comics and everything like that. But I mean, I think that I'm very impressed with what I've seen so far, and I'm excited to see him actually in action. But just to, again, when, like you mentioned, we got that quick glimpse of him in the teaser trailer, and it took a couple minutes afterwards to realize, wait, that was him. So now to kind of get a little bit more of a in-depth look, get to actually see it for an extended amount of time, it just makes me even more excited.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And again, this is on this big, I think it's St. George's Hall in Liverpool. And it's a beautiful location. The building's spectacular, and it fits perfectly into what you would imagine for Gotham. And then on top of that, as you said, we saw Penguin, Colin Farrell, and there's a moment where Robert Pattinson as Bruce, he runs up the steps, and it seems like he's trying to get after Falcone. Maybe he's trying to talk to him or Selena, and Colin Farrell's Penguin kind of steps in between them and puts his hand on his shoulder and stops him. So it's maybe possible as Penguin is just Oswald Cobblepot is just starting out as similarly to Batman, similarly to Selena Kyle. He may be an enforcer of some sort, and he's going to obtain the Penguin moniker, and then he's going to become his own kind of crime lord and have his own gang and things like that, as we know from the comics and the video games.
I would say that the most familiar that I am with the Penguin as a character is through the show Gotham, the first couple seasons of that. I was pretty into it, and this is a complete 180 from that version of Oswald Cobblepot, just
obviously
in looks.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine that it carries over into the other aspects of the character as well.
Yeah. And so we got this, this huge gathering, and of course all the extras have masks on, and they do a bunch of rehearsal. And then people notice that when they actually shot the scenes for the film, they yell, okay, masks off, action. And so that it seems like they're taking it very seriously. There's lots of signs posted talking about the COVID protocols and being sanitized and having a mask and things like that. So that's great to see. Warner Brothers taking it seriously. They're also doing The Matrix 4. They've been doing that in Berlin for a while now, and they are probably getting close to done with that. And so this isn't their first rodeo. They also did the Dune reshoots. And then from there, we saw a bunch of police cars for Gotham. We saw a bunch of policemen. We saw a SWAT team. They're storming the building. That is, I would assume, related to the funeral scene, the funeral attack, or maybe that's something else, and that's kind of related maybe. And then they have this huge setup in the Liverpool Square. And this is something that Matt Reeves talked about at DC Fandom in recreating a Gotham from his own vision instead of something like what Tim Burton did or what Christopher Nolan did. Tim Burton, of course, did these huge sets, and it's all in the studio, and it's very Art Deco and very gothic. And then Christopher Nolan basically just did, hey, here's Chicago, and then let's mishmash that with some New York and some Pittsburgh, which was fine because he was going for a very realistic and like real world feel to it. But this is Matt Reeves saying kind of, we want it to be like, it's set in America, of course, Gotham City's in the United States, but we want it to be like unlike anything you've seen. So they went out to this huge square in Liverpool. They have all these old buildings and this kind of gothic architecture all around. And then they have these giant video screens that they're putting up that have advertisements and news footage. And they had a Halloween fair set up with pumpkin, decorations and orange and black everywhere and things like that. And people were dressed up in costume.
Including Superman.
Including Superman. That's what I was about to ask you about. And people went kind of crazy over this little detail as well. And there was a woman wearing a Wonder Woman costume. So we know that this is a completely separate thing from the DCEU. That's a term that we've been using to talk about what started out as Zack Snyder's universe and has now shifted into the same place where we know Aquaman and Wonder Woman and Shazam. But with this, there's only two explanations for this, right? Superman and Wonder Woman exist in some form, and it must be that they are either superhero comic book characters in Batman's world, like they're in the comic books and that's it, they're made up, or they are in fact real superheroes and they are known and they're out there in the world somewhere. And people were looking at a tweet that Matt Reeves had from after he got the job to do Batman. People were kind of freaking out about, well, is it going to be connected? Is it not going to be connected? And they were kind of putting that on him to explain or decide how they were going to go about it, whether that's fair or not. But he said in August 2017, just to be clear, of course, Batman will be part of the DC universe. Batman will be Batman. And by that, he means, the DC universe, these characters will all exist in that world together. They're not isolated. I mean, you have your Elseworld stories where they can do their own thing and they can mess with continuity and things like that. But in the very, fiber of the DCU, they're all together, even if they're doing their own stories. So I think what he's doing is he's doing Batman, and that's what he's focused on, and he's not going to involve other heroes, but he's acknowledging, kind of winking at the audience that, yep, these people are out there. There's also newspapers on set, and this is in Chicago. They have different newspaper setups, and one of them, the Gotham Times, talks about what sounds like maybe a field trip or some sort of trip to Metropolis. It explicitly says Metropolis, and it says that the bus was like a hive of innocent little faces looking up to the skies, fingers pointed everywhere, looking for you-know-who. And that's very blatantly talking about Superman without naming him. So I think that's what's going on. What do you think is going on? Do you like that idea?
I mean, I'm with you. I don't think that we're going to get any sort of like crossover or anything here. I think this is very standalone, but like you said, nodding to the other heroes or just like the existence of them. And that was something that I always liked about the Christopher Nolan trilogy, is that it was like Batman is the only one. There is no like, oh, did you hear about what Superman did the other day down in Metropolis? Like, there was no kind of like acknowledgement of other superheroes. So I don't want there to be any crossover, and I don't think there will be, but I'm also fine. Obviously there are these little nods, these little Easter eggs, but I'm fine if it's nothing more than just an Easter egg. I don't need any sort of mention of anybody else or allusion to it. I like kind of, okay, this is Batman and only Batman, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think you're right. I think that is how they're going to go. Something I said,
especially just because the tone here seems completely different than anything else that we've gotten from DC, like on screen recently.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think something I said on Twitter too is just talking about how Matt Reeves is clearly trying to do like the definitive version. I mean, Nolan did his thing, and everyone loves the Dark Knight trilogy. I think by and large, people like those movies a lot. And that's kind of the version that people think of, because especially with that being the most recent successful Batman movies. And if he's going to try to do his own definitive version of Batman, I think you kind of have to be like, yes, this is in that world. And in the Batman animated series, which is a very definitive version of Batman that a lot of people love, that existed in the same world as all these other heroes. It just didn't affect the story they were telling. And the same thing with the Arkham Knight games, which again are very widely loved. It's just Batman. There aren't any other superheroes, but it references Metropolis and Green Arrow and the Flash and these other things. So I think that's the way to go. And I think that's really, really cool if that's what he intends to do. The last thing we'll really talk about is that in Liverpool and in Chicago this weekend, they had stunts going on. The main one in Liverpool was which got a lot of attention. We got some awesome photos out of it. Was on I believe it was the Liver Building in Liverpool. It's a tall clock tower-esque building. It's very gothic looking. And they had Batman posed up there, strapped up, with a safety harness, of course. But they had helicopters swooping around with cameras on them, and they were getting some shots of that. And it's not clear if that's for an action sequence or if it's just some establishing shot or something, but very, very cool. And the building itself was lit up in an orangish, reddish color, which was very fitting from what we've seen so far. And then just in the last couple of nights in Chicago, they've done a motorcycle chase scene, which looks like Bruce chasing Selena, not Batman, but as Bruce dressed up with a costume we've already seen from him. And they have some really cool camera rigs going on. They have some first-person perspective stuff where the headlight and the handlebars and some fake hands are placed in front of a real motorcycle that someone is driving, and then there's a camera in between them capturing it. And then, of course, also a third-person camera rig, which is over the shoulder and like over the head. And they're on the streets of Chicago. They're under the L train tracks. It looks very cool, very reminiscent of the French Connection, which is something that Matt Reeves even referenced as an inspiration for this movie. So I love it. I mean, this stuff looks really cool. There's a ton of, fans get to go out on the streets and they get to see it in person. I think that does nothing but makes them excited, and it boosts, the PR for the movie and kind of gets people more excited. It's just free advertising, really. So I love what we're seeing. The stunts look awesome. Costumes look awesome. And just like little Easter eggs that we're seeing now, there's more speculation, even though this movie's officially over a year and a half away now, which this makes me more bummed out about that. But I'm glad that they're getting the time to just do it right, and they're not having to rush. Because if it hadn't been pushed back for Dune, this movie would be coming out less than a year, and I think people would be kind of like, oh, are they going to be able to make that date?
Right.
All the stuff that's going on. So lots of exciting things. It's really cool and something to kind of pacify fans with the extra weight now. And we'll probably be seeing more location shoots supposedly next week, maybe in Chicago. So stay tuned and look out on Twitter.
Are you down for a road trip? Should we go?
Yeah. If I had the money, it'd be no hesitation. I'd be getting a flight Friday night. I'd be out there in the streets for a couple nights, and then I would just come back. But I think people in Chicago, if you're near Chicago, go look around, because there's stuff out there.
One thing that's been like super fascinating to me about all this is I don't know whether it's just because I am like more into movies and production and pay more attention to it, or if this is just because of coronavirus and kind of everything being shut down, so there's more eyes on it, or what. But like, I can't remember a time when there was this much like this much. It seems like they don't have secrecy around this. Not that they're like necessarily trying to be, but like people are just like, oh yeah, that's where Batman is. I'm gonna go out on the street and I'm gonna watch them make this movie. Like there isn't like any sort of like closed stage or anything like around this. That people, I like Brandon Davis from Comic Book, like he just like went out to Chicago and like was walking around picking up newspaper clippings from Gotham and stuff, like just seeing it all. Like you can just go and do all this, and I think it's really cool, but also it's just like strange to me, because I can't imagine. On the one hand, I'm like devouring all the stuff that you send, and like this is so cool, but on the other, it's like I kind of want to be like completely shocked when I see everything on screen. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, I saw them taking set photos and filming all this like a year and a half ago on Twitter. It's just like a weird balance of all that.
I think too is that part of what I think is really impressive, and part of why I'm also not really concerned in that regard, is that, well, first, the stuff that we're seeing is stuff that we already have either seen literally in the trailer, and they're kind of extending, like the funeral stuff that we got this past weekend with Colin Farrell and them at the funeral, going up the steps and coming down the steps and things like that, which is, we saw the funeral in the trailer. And then, of course, the motorcycle stuff, they hadn't filmed in Chicago yet, but we knew that we had that's, I think it was in February or January, where they had the reveal of the Batman costume and they were out on the motorcycle and Catwoman was on her motorcycle, which is interesting. So that's impressive, but also like the stuff where you have the newspapers and like the stickers that are all over the place and the signage and the cars, and it's just like the amount of detail. It's like stuff, as I've seen a lot of people point out on Twitter, it's like, this is stuff that if you're just watching the movie, you're probably not even going to even see this stuff ever, or maybe not notice it. But they're like going to great lengths to like really put in Easter eggs and like flesh out the world and just go into a lot of like minutia that I think is interesting. You can tell Matt Reeves is such a huge fan. I mean, one of the stickers that's just randomly placed out in Chicago on like a dumpster or a trash can or something, it's set, the words on it, it's the name of a title from Batman the animated series. And I think that's just wild. Like, it's just the tiniest Easter egg, but it's still something that they had to design and print. And it's just like, it's amazing how much work goes into these movies in general with blockbusters, but something like this where they're having to essentially recreate an entire world or an entire city in multiple cities and continents and things like that. Yeah, it's nuts. So we'll see how much more we see. They got to be close to done, I think, either this month or next month. So we got to enjoy it while we can, I suppose.
Well, I think that's enough Batman talk. That is our first news topic about 45 minutes into the podcast. So if you're just skipping ahead because you don't care about Batman, welcome back to the podcast. Let's continue on with some more news. Exciting stuff from the world of Mad Max. We finally know that the spin-off movie of Fury Road called Furiosa is a go, based on Charlize Theron's character from Fury Road. Anya Taylor-Joy will star as a young Furiosa, and Chris Hemsworth and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who we will be talking about later, they will both be co-starring in this movie, which is a standalone action-adventure feature that acts as an origin story for Furiosa. What is your, first of all, just like reactions? I know this is Mad Max Fury Road is like one of your favorites of the last decade.
Yeah, I was very giddy when I heard this news. I mean, they've been trying to do this spin-off / prequel movie for a while now. Fury Road came out over 5 years ago. And I knew there was complications, but this has been brewing, and I'm excited to see that they're finally attaching names to it. And George Miller is very much involved. He's doing everything with this movie, directing, writing, and producing. So that's awesome. And Anya Taylor-Joy, I think, is a very good choice. I know Jodie Comer was someone else they were looking at. And I have an affinity for Anya Taylor-Joy. I mean, I loved her in The Witch, and I also, in the M. Night Shyamalan films, and she's done some good stuff. So I think this is a good role for her, more action oriented. And then, of course, Chris Hemsworth and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II are both fan favorites, especially MCU fans for Chris Hemsworth. And then Watchmen recently, he just, Yahya just won the Emmy for that and is now doing some other big movies. So I think it fits. He's an Aquaman, and Warner Brothers obviously likes him, and he's doing The Matrix 4, and it's just like he's has an embarrassment of riches as far as his upcoming movies goes.
I think so. I'm not sure. Maybe you have. I have not seen, when I saw Fury Road, like I haven't seen any of the old Mad Max movies from back in like the 70s and 80s. So there is like Furiosa is new in Fury Road, correct? Like there is we don't know anything other than how we meet her there, what we see of her there. So that's exciting to kind of, this is like a whole new, not a new world because it's established, but just like a whole new story, a whole new direction to take this, which is just like such a thrilling movie that to me was just completely like standalone when I saw it.
Yeah. They can definitely they can go a bunch of different directions. I assume they're going to lean into what we already know about her in some respect. I mean, we know about the Green Place. We know vaguely about what happened with her mother dying soon after they left, and she was taken as a child. And I would assume this is going to be sometime after she was taken. Anya Taylor-Joy is, of course, not a child. I mean, she's 20-something years old, 22, 23. So that'll be cool. I think she's going to do some. I would expect. It's hard to compare to Fury Road. I mean, it's maybe the greatest action movie ever made. I think it'd be unfair to expect this to be the greatest ever in that regard. Even though George Miller's doing it, but I have extremely, extremely high expectations. I'm just not going to make it too high where it's going to be impossible to enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of my most anticipated. No question.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited about that news. I'm sure it's still a very long way off, but just enough to get us excited again about this.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing that's way closer, though, we got a new trailer for Soul coming to Disney Plus on Christmas Day. I mean, that was the news last week of just like the transition. So I guess they decided to follow that up, the shift to Disney Plus with a new trailer. And I mean, we already knew this looked incredible. We were both already super high on it, and I think this only made that excitement even greater. This looks absolutely incredible. This made it look even more of like the brainchild of Inside Out, like the kind of like not sequel but sequel at the same time. Like it's just like of that same mind, that same style. So I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, I didn't watch this trailer.
Okay.
I don't need to watch the trailer for Soul. I don't need to hear anything else about it. I said this last week, I think, that I'm excited. I know it's going to be amazing. I loved Inside Out. I love Pete Docter. It looks amazing in the first trailer we saw, which was like either early this year or last year at this point. So just give me the movie. Give me the movie. I'm sure I'm going to love it. It's been one of my most anticipated for the entire year, and it hasn't changed. So can't wait.
Yeah, I will say, I know you didn't watch it, but they did say a great line in there. It says, "Don't worry, you can't crush a soul here. That's what life on Earth is for." And I was like, well, if that's not 2020, then I don't know what is. So now it makes sense why they are pushing so hard to get this out this year. It all makes sense now.
Yeah, that's funny, and I think this will be a good Christmas present when it arrives.
For sure. We also got some other big news, big news as far as casting goes for Don't Look Up, which is a new movie coming to Netflix from Adam McKay. I know you have some thoughts on him. We can get into that, but just this cast list alone is impressive. Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Rob Morgan, Meryl Streep, Cate Blanchett, Jonah Hill, Himesh Patel, Timothy Chalamet, Ariana Grande, Kid Cudi, Matthew Perry, and Tomer Sisley. What, like, that's deep. That is so deep. Just like the fact that Timothy Chalamet was like the 8th person I read off on that list. It's insane. This is going to be the little log line is that it follows 2 low-level astronomers who embark on a media tour to warn mankind of an approaching asteroid that will destroy Earth. Now, to me, that sounds like it's getting back to Adam McKay's comedic roots of like Other Guys, Step Brothers, Anchorman. Like maybe not as like bold and raunchy as that. Hopefully, like a little wittier or just like not as just like audacious as those. But I mean, we know recently he's done like The Big Short and Vice and like a lot more. He's doing the Theranos story, like a lot of basically any sort of like terrible real life event, Adam McKay has covered it. So he's done like a complete shift in his subject matter. But what's your reaction to this news? Your reaction to Adam McKay in general? How do you feel?
Yeah. I mean, this is an amazing cast objectively. I am excited about the possibilities of them being together. I love Leo. He's been very selective as of late. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Tarantino collaboration was his first movie since The Revenant. The Revenant came out in 2015. So the fact that he picked this to do next is pretty immense. Jennifer Lawrence is also making a little bit of a comeback. I don't recall what her last movie was. I think the last thing I saw her in was the Red Sparrow. I know
she's going to be, and she's playing Elizabeth Holmes in the in the what's her name? Elizabeth Holmes, is that right? In the Theranos movie with Adam McKay. So that will come out before this, I believe.
Yeah, so she's plotting a little bit of a comeback, and of course you have these such heavyweights as Meryl Streep and Kate Blanchett and Timothy Chalamet, who's just continues to roll on with some amazing. He just has The French Dispatch with Wes Anderson, and then into Dune with Denis Villeneuve, and now he's doing Adam McKay with this huge ensemble. So, yeah, the plot, the little log line we have here sounds funny. It sounds interesting enough. I just can't get super excited because I was super excited about Vice. I liked The Big Short quite a bit. That cast was also exceptional, and I thought I did a pretty good job of talking about something serious and talking about something very complicated while also keeping it entertaining and funny. And I thought that was just missing from Vice. I thought Vice was not nearly as witty, more condescending, more heavy-handed, less subtle. It just left a bad taste in my mouth, and I really didn't care for it. So the fact that this is not a true story situation gives me gives me a more optimistic feeling than that, because he can really do whatever he wants. He can make it as funny as he wants. He can make it as zany as he wants. Because I do love some of his older comedies. But this is clearly going to be some sort of socio-political satire, and it is timely and relevant, quote unquote, because you have scientists warning all these people about this very dangerous thing that is upon them, and it sounds like there's probably gonna be a lot of skepticism and a lot of media things happening and controversies, and just I hope that this is as good as it can be. I think there is a lot of potential here. I just can't really get excited for it at this point.
This is a quote according to the IMDb page. It says Adam McKay states the film is, quote, a hard, funny satire. I don't think it's a Step Brothers type comedy. I would compare it more to somewhere between the Mike Judge stuff and Wag the Dog. I don't know what either of those is, but not as we guess, not in the same vein of the jokes that we saw between Dale and Brennan and Step Brothers, but definitely going on the comedic side. And like you said, a lot of opportunity to make fun of fake news or climate change or coronavirus, like that sort of like distrust of the media and scientists and like
right.
all of that.
Mike Judge, for those of you who do not know, I didn't know his name off the top of my head, but he does do satire stuff. He wrote and directed Idiocracy, which a lot of people may be familiar with. And he also he wrote and directed Office Space. He was involved with The Simpsons. So I can see that kind of satire and like social commentary working for this story. I think that would be like legitimately funny. It just has to be executed right. I mean, that's really all there is to it. So with this cast, that gives me hope. I think Leo and Jennifer Lawrence in particular, because they're very choosy with their stuff, Leo more so. I don't think he would agree to it if he didn't think that the script could be a hit, and if he didn't think it would, get a lot of a critical acclaim or awards attention. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I do have my concerns still.
Have to wait and see. That is 2021, I believe, or at least originally. I don't know if that's changed with all of the delays and everything, but we'll keep an eye on that. Another big thing coming soon. This is just in the very foundational stages here of the announcement that Joaquin Phoenix is set to star as French military leader and Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte in Kit Bag, directed by Ridley Scott. I know I'm going to let you take the lead on this one since it is your boy Joaquin, your boy Ridley. What is your excitement level here? I know it's like through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty damn stoked about this. I mean, first off, it came out of nowhere. Ridley Scott is always very busy. He's usually juggling multiple film projects at the same time. For example, he has been filming The Last Duel with Adam Driver, Matt Damon, and Ben Affleck. which has faced COVID issues as far as having to stop production, restart. But they just wrapped that up, and he's also preparing to do Gucci in the spring. They're going to be filming that in Italy, and that's Lady Gaga's return to the screen, and it also has an all-star cast with Adam Driver collaborating with Ridley Scott again, and then Robert De Niro and Al Pacino collaborating again after doing The Irishman together. So that's just an amazing cast. But this came out of nowhere, and will presumably be filmed in production after they do Gucci. So this is certainly down the line. They probably wouldn't film this till late next year or early 2022. But Stanley Kubrick is one of the greatest directors of all time, of course, one of my personal favorites, and huge fan of his work on Barry Lyndon in particular, which might be my favorite movie of his. But he very famously had a Napoleon biopic in the works, and they were doing costumes, and they were actually very close to working on it and actually starting production, and it all fell through. A lot of people say it's the greatest film never made because everything Kubrick did was sensational one way or another, and Napoleon is just a very interesting historical figure. And so for Ridley Scott, who's a guy, he's done a lot of true story stuff. He's done a lot of period pieces and biopics. I think the thing that most immediately comes to mind with this is Gladiator, which was a huge success. And that came out, in 2000. It was a success financially. It was a success with the Oscars. It won Best Picture, Best costume design, Best Actor for Russell Crowe, and actually Joaquin Phoenix appeared in Gladiator, and he was nominated for his first Oscar for his role in that film as the villain, playing Commodus. So I think this is a cool, kind of coming back together 20 years later, and I think that this is just ripe for some incredible. I think Ridley Scott is a good choice, even though in recent years I haven't been a huge fan of his. I don't know. We talked about how. Do you like Alien Covenant, or did you ever see all
I didn't see it. I remember I just recently, during the pandemic, watched the original Alien for the first time.
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
I believe I made the joke that I've only seen Alien and the Apple 1984 commercial.
That's right.
Jake is the one who's assigned me to watch The Martian. I have that on Blu-ray that I'm going to get into.
Oh man.
I don't really have. That's why another reason I let you take this one, because you're more familiar with all of his stuff. But I mean, the name obviously has huge recognition and a great history behind it, and then big Joaquin Phoenix fan as well, knowing what he's capable of. The scale here, I feel like, is just going to be like tremendous. The opportunity here, and you mentioned like different Oscar stuff, like just the idea of it being like the production design, the costume design, all of that stuff is just like there for the taking. I feel like with something as grand as this.
Yeah, and the something we should probably mention. This is the first time I've ever heard this term before, but the name of the movie, Kit Bag, in all the articles that I've read, says that it's derived from the saying, "There's a general staff hidden in every soldier's kit bag." Now, I don't know if that's something. I Googled this as well, and I can find no other mention or reference of it anywhere. So I don't know if that's supposed to be a Napoleon quote or if that's something that came later. But I think it's fitting because I know Napoleon, of course, just started as a random officer, and then very quickly rose through the ranks as a military commander, and then he took over France as an emperor. He established himself. But they say the intention of the film is to capture Napoleon's famous battles, relentless ambition, and astounding strategic mind as an extraordinary military leader and war visionary. But it's not just going to be about battles and action and stuff like that. Seems like the more key aspect of it is going to be it's in a personal look, and not just his origins and his rise through the ranks, but also his addictive and volatile relationship with his wife, Josephine Bonaparte. And I've been fan casting already as soon as this news came out. I said, Rooney Mara, they are married. They have a child now. I think she looks in paintings and things. They look like good for these roles. I think that would just be a really cool pairing. The fact that they are an actual couple. it'll be interesting. It sounds like Josephine is going to be a huge part of the movie, so I hope that they cast an A-list and very, very talented female actor for that role. Yeah, overall, this sounds amazing. This and Furiosa. That news coming out in the same week is just like, I couldn't have asked for anything better. It was very much out of the blue, but these are easily two of my most anticipated films for the foreseeable future. So
definitely. I mean, not at the same level of you, but definitely some excitement there. And one final piece of news before we get into our review. Another trailer that we got, Hillbilly Elegy, coming to Netflix. This is Glenn Close and Amy Adams. Oh, brother. So I'm not high on this, but I know you're an Amy Adams stan. You love Arrival. You love Amy Adams. But I mean, I'm not, this is a Ron Howard movie. I am not crazy about anything like particularly with him, with this movie in general. It looks very Oscar baity. I mean, obviously we know that Amy Adams has never won. She has been quote unquote robbed, like for Sharp Objects at the Emmys or for Arrival at the Oscars, anything like that she's kind of due. And then Glenn Close, I don't believe she's ever won either.
She's
right?
never won. No.
She's never won. Nominated 7 times.
Yeah.
So this is like I feel like this is gonna be It's Perfectly Fine movie, but not deserving of what
I'm gonna chime in and say this does not look perfectly fine to me. This looks perfectly awful. This is so, it looks like a parody. Like it looks like if you had to come up with like an Oscar bait parody like trailer, like this is something they would play before Tropic Thunder.
I was about to say Tropic Thunder when you went on that train of thought.
Like it's almost offensive. Like there someone mentioned on Twitter, I can't remember who the user was, but like whoever decided that the emotional climax of this trailer was going to be a hackneyed line about there are good Terminators in the world and there are bad Terminators in the world, and then there's a neutral. What the sorry, excuse my language. What the fuck does that mean?
Now I have to put the explicit warning on here. Come on.
Like Jesus, like that is just so laughably put together. I don't know. I've also seen a lot of people criticizing the author of this novel that they're adapting. I saw something to the effect of he's actually like never even lived in where this is set. I'm not totally sure how personal this story is or how accurate it is. So I don't know. That's weird. That doesn't affect my view of the film. Really, I'm not totally, I don't think accuracy is necessarily the number one thing with this, but it looks bad. To me, it looks very much like Amy Adams and Glenn Close are just throwing down the gauntlet. They're like, "Yeah, you don't want to go to an Oscar? We're gonna just do something so Oscar baity. You have no choice but to at least nominate him again, I suppose." In a year like this, I would say, unless this movie just gets awful reviews, I would think that they're pretty solid locks for nominations. But who knows? It's interesting. The hair and makeup looks impressive. They have made them look awful. They've done old age makeup and things like that. They look very weathered. So that's impressive. But yeah, I don't look forward to looking at this movie. I don't know if I'll watch it. I guess it comes down to what I need to do, but we'll see. We'll see.
I will say that it's just another sort of Haley Bennett is in this as well, and that's just another like the Netflix family staying together because she was obviously in a movie that seems somewhat similar to this with The Devil All the Time, because I mean the storyline here is it says that Hillbilly Elegy is a modern exploration of the American dream and 3 generations of an Appalachian family as told by its youngest member. So like that on at surface level sounds similar to The Devil All the Time, although I'm sure these are very different movies like when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
But I guess she just has something for that Appalachian storytelling.
Oh man. Well, I hope it's better than it looks. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about this one, but we'll probably both get DVDs of it in the mail for NCFCA. I'll check it out for Netflix to write a review for it. You got lucky on the coin flip, so maybe I'll watch it and love it, and you'll have to check it out so we can review it on the podcast. So
yeah, I may get wrapped into it anyway. So
yeah, we'll circle back to that one. But now it's time for another Netflix movie. We are here for the main event. We're talking about the trial of the Chicago 7.
When we walked in here this morning, they were chanting that the whole world is watching.
If we leave here without saying anything about why we came in the first place, it'll be heartbreaking.
Last summer, why did you come to the convention?
To end the war.
We're giving them exactly what they want, a stage and an audience.
Yeah, you really think there's going to be a big audience?
This is what revolution looks like, real revolution. We may have to hurt somebody's feelings.
Is this prosecution politically motivated?
I'm tired of hearing you. It would be impossible for me to care any less what you are tired of.
There will be order!
We have to find some courage now.
How much is it worth to you? What's your price?
To call off the revolution? My life.
Open your eyes, 'cause a new day is dawning. The new day is dawning.
This is the latest from Aaron Sorkin, who Johnny's had a recent change of heart about. Aaron Sorkin, writer director of this film, noted as one of the greatest screenwriters of our time. Not as much as a director. He's had a little bit of experience here and there with Molly's Game and now this. But obviously on the writing front, A Few Good Men, Steve Jobs, this right here, Trial of the Chicago 7, Moneyball, Social Network, created The West Wing, also a TV series called The Newsroom. A ton of a long history of being a very good writer. He created the Walk and Talk, a bunch of just the king of dialogue, basically. I know I haven't really checked in with him since watching this movie because I know he was sort of middle of the road like you, but I know he's been a diehard Sorkin guy. So I don't know if this affected his overall views, but this is an Aaron Sorkin movie.
It sure is. It sure is.
I saw one quote that said that this is classic Sorkin, but it's not a Sorkin classic.
That's a funny line. Props to whoever put that one out. Yeah, I mean, as you said, he is very renowned in a lot of ways. He's very distinct. He's basically an auteur screenwriter. He is. I would say he's certainly not an auteur director yet, based on his style in Molly's Game and his style here. I don't know. A lot of people now. There are a lot of fans of Sorkin, and his work has been undeniably great in the past for certain things, at least. A Few Good Men is I'd say it's a classic of the 90s, kind of crime drama, courtroom drama style movie. And then now, more recently with Social Network, and he's won an Oscar, and the Social Network's incredible. I love Steve Jobs as well. And I have in more recently, even before this movie came out and even in the lead up to it, I've seen some of his stuff from The Newsroom, and he has a very certain way that he likes to present, I guess, his political commentary and his social commentary that just doesn't jive with me, I guess. And here it's kind of very much on display, even though this is a story from 1969, 1968. It's what everyone has been calling timely and relevant. And I would agree with that. I mean, I'm sure you would agree with that too.
Definitely. I mean, the whole premise of this is that it's, like you said, based on the true story of the 1968 DNC in Chicago and the ensuing legal trials. that in 1969, 7 people were charged by the federal government with conspiracy and more arising from the protests at the 1968 DNC in Chicago. So obviously you mentioned timely. Like that was one of like the anchors of my introduction for my written review on the website, of just talking about how obviously this has been a summer of protest, whether it's people protesting police brutality and social injustice or people protesting masks. Like everyone is protesting that, like what good bad or indifferent, like people on all sides are protesting.
Yeah.
And so this is like a story of the people in power and like manipulating power and all of that to kind of fit their narrative and enforce the rules how they see, even if it's not the right way. And that's something that is obviously very relevant to life right now in America.
Agreed. And I think that's going to be, you said that was kind of the anchor of your, at least your review intro. I think that's going to be the anchor of any type of this is
narrative here.
A narrative for like awards. Because we're entering award season. This is coming out quite early in the cycle, but there in a year like 2020, especially, not only with what's happened in the country and the world and in the news, but with the movie situation being what it is and what's available, I think this is no doubt going to be a contender. And I think the narrative around this and that aspect is going to be more than anything else, more than anything in the film, like the quality of the film is going to be what drives it. And I said when the trailer was coming out, when this was kind of rolling out promo, that this was going to be my prediction for the Best Picture winner. I think it still is. I mean, we haven't seen Mank. We haven't even heard about how good Mank is yet, really. Nomadland's fantastic. I think that is still a legit contender. And then we have stuff from more Netflix stuff, like other than Mank, we have Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and it's not a thin field by any means, even with all that's going on. But that will certainly be an aspect to look at and something that we'll talk about more as we get into this. The cast is another aspect that I think will help. Not just it helps the film in some respects more than others, but I think that's something that's going to help its trajectory as an awards contender, because I think the more stars you have it, the more respectable actors you have in it, the more traction you can gain, especially with stuff like the SAG Awards and things where acting is concerned.
And especially like an ensemble, like
an ensemble, which is what this truly is. I would not say that there's any lead actors in this film. Would you?
I would say, like, if I had to pick one, I would say Sacha Baron Cohen.
Really?
Just because he's kind of, well, I mean, I guess they kind of position him and Eddie Redmayne kind of as antagonists. Like they're on the same side, but against each other. That's kind of like the controversy.
I think that's kind of fair, yeah.
Within the story, but I mean, again, I'm with you though. I would say I probably wouldn't pick one, but if I had to, I would say one of the two of them. But then I guess out of those two, I like Sacha Baron Cohen way more. So that made me, I guess, is what made me lean towards him.
Yeah. This cast is stacked though. We have Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who is coming fresh off of that Emmy win that we were just talking about earlier, for Watchmen. And then, of course, we have other Oscar winners and Oscar nominees. We have Sacha Baron Cohen, Daniel Flaherty, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who he wasn't in movies for like, I think 3 years or something like that. And now this is his third film this year. Which
Shout out Project Power, baby.
Which is good for him. Because I know the reason he stepped away was to help raise his kids. So that's commendable. And then on top of that, we also have, we have Michael Keaton, Frank Langella, we have John Carroll Lynch, Eddie Redmayne, as you already mentioned, Noah Robbins, Mark Rylance, Oscar winner there, Alex Sharp, and then Jeremy Strong, who also just won an Emmy for his work on Succession. So it's top to bottom stacked, very male heavy, which is true to the story and the real history of the Chicago 7. And Chicago 7, I knew that there was this trial and there were these certain people that were being indicted. I didn't understand when the movie was beginning that there were 8 initially in the courtroom, and the 8th person, Zach can explain, is Yahya Abdul-Mateen II's character, and that is, of course, Bobby Seale, the founder and the head of the Black Panther Party.
Right. Before, I guess we'll kind of get into that in a second, but I just want to, if you can't tell yet, we'll kind of give our general like standings on this movie. So first of all, Rotten Tomatoes, 94% critic score, 92% audience score. I gave this is my top movie of the year so far. I gave this 5 stars, 98 out of 100. Like, I love this movie. I told Johnny before we got started that he has just recently watched this. I watched this in early September, I believe. So it's been a minute. So I was like, Johnny, you're going to be able to come in here with these like recently formed opinions and just roast me. And I'm going to be like, wait, I think this happened. So please, if you're listening, forgive me. But that does not diminish my appreciation of this movie. Maybe it would change if I rewatched it or something. But on that first viewing, I was completely like encapsulated with it. I thought it was extremely entertaining. One of my biggest takeaways was just the fact that this is a courtroom drama, and that can go like one of two ways. Either it's something thrilling or it's kind of boring and monotonous and drones on. And I think that that's something that Sorkin was able to do with the writing, of just like making this electric. Like, I found that the courtroom discussions, the arguments, everything, it felt like it was action scenes playing out because everything was so tense. The pacing was great. And then I also liked the way that they were able to kind of incorporate instead of just like, okay, here were the events that happened, and then here's the court case. It was like kind of jumping around, messing with the chronology of different events. So I thought that was another way to keep it fresh. But we'll get into all of the reasons why I like it in a minute as we get into our discussion. But I just wanted to state that I am a very big fan of this movie, and Johnny can take it away with his not as big fan.
No, I'm pretty much on the opposite spectrum. I didn't hate this movie.
You still gave it 3. I think we have very different definitions of like our ranking system, because on Letterboxd you gave this 3 stars, and like if I give a movie 3 stars, that means like, yeah, I enjoyed it, I thought it was good. But you're like 3 stars is not good.
3 stars is mediocre, like very mediocre. It's like down middle of the road, basically. I might change that. I might make it 2.5, but I'm definitely more. Like I said, that's a very middle of the road rating for me. But I am 100% more leaning towards bad than good. Like, I have a lot more negative feelings about this film than good ones, really. Yeah, you were talking about how like electrifying it was, and like how you managed to make it like very entertaining. And for me, I felt like just so the opposite. Like I just felt like it was just, I was bored a lot, and I feel like for what we've seen, even in Molly's Game, which I wasn't a huge fan of, I did like it, which came out in 2017, and that was kind of structured similarly to this. And I do like what he did here as far as he starts out the movie. The best scene in this movie and the best sequence for me was the opening. He's quickly establishes all these different characters from these different organizations and groups. Jeremy Strong and his character and Sacha Baron Cohen's character are these basically more like hippie characters, or like anarcho-communists. Like, they're very much against the establishment. Of course, you might not even know that by the way that Aaron Sorkin portrays them, but they're kind of coming in with their own agenda. And then Eddie Redmayne's character is coming in with his agenda. And you have John Carroll Lynch is coming in by himself. And it's just a lot of establishment. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Bobby Seale is also coming into Chicago. All these different groups are just pouring into the city. And you quickly get cut back and forth, as well with archival footage, real news footage, preceding the Democratic National Convention. And so it sets the stage perfectly. It sets up the characters. It's everything that you would want to see in an opening. Editing's fast, feels fun, the dialogue's snappy. And then the title card comes up, and then it cuts to months later when the trial is getting ready to start. I thought that was clever. I thought that was well done. And then as the trial plays out and certain events are brought up or certain interactions are brought up, it cuts back to when those were happening in real life. And that was a good job of keep it interesting, not letting it get too bogged down in just the talking and the details of what happened. You actually get to see things, and that was well done. And I think that's something that kind of happened in Molly's Game as well. And that was a movie where she's going through this deposition, and it's the same thing he did in The Social Network, where there's a deposition happening, and you are hearing these facts and these accusations and these claims, and you're seeing what happened or how it's being portrayed. And I think that's something that works for him. And that is the strongest part of this. The other things I had issues with, though, where it fails for me, was some of the casting decisions, some of that, just the acting in general, the performances, and then just the writing and the direction. Aaron Sorkin,
so basically the entire movie.
Aaron Sorkin is not, like, I complained earlier about Adam McKay, and I think that he did not do well with Vice. And I think this is something like, it's not as totally bad or as offensive as Vice, I don't think. But this is where it's, and something that I would also compare it to even is Tenet, which is a completely different film from a completely different filmmaker, someone who's very established as an auteur and has his own style. But as I said, Sorkin is kind of an auteur in his style. When you hear his dialogue and you see the scenes, the way he kind of structures them as far as back and forth dialogue happens, it's very distinct. And here, he has full control. He's directing. He's working with Netflix. They're giving him pretty much carte blanche. And I think that's to his detriment. I think he's much better when he's paired with a strong auteur director like a David Fincher or like a Danny Boyle, the directors of The Social Network, and then Steve Jobs, respectively. Because they have a distinct visual style, and they have a way that they like to edit scenes, and they are big enough names and have enough credit where they can, if Sorkin's doing the script and that's all he's doing, they can kind of steer him in certain directions, or they can, stop him from leaning into his worst tendencies. Tenet was one of my most anticipated films of the year. I know you actually haven't even seen Tenet yet. But I went into that movie with super high expectations, and I was very disappointed. And I think part of why that is because it was just Nolan giving into his worst inclinations and having total control and coming off of a huge success with Dunkirk. Now, Molly's Game wasn't like a huge success by any means, but Aaron Sorkin is very well respected in the industry. And when he has control like this, I don't think there's anyone who can really tell him what to do necessarily, because they kind of trust his career and what he's done. But I thought there was a lot that could have been changed about this for the better. But I think from the top, let's talk about the ensemble in particular, because when I was just mentioning, I thought some casting was great, some performances were great, others were not so much.
Yeah, I want to hear that. Who do you think? Well, first of all, I guess I'll give you a break and I'll talk a little bit. But I think the three best for me were, I guess, four best. I loved the duo of Sacha Baron Cohen and Jeremy Strong as the sort of bumbling hippie duo, but also like very smart, just in their own way, their own style. So I thought that they were. Was that a gag?
No, it was like a stifled laugh.
I thought that they added a lot of like nice comedic relief to a story that can be like super like depressing and disheartening at times.
Yeah.
And then Yahya was great as Bobby Seale, not nearly in this movie, like you mentioned at the top, that he was the eighth, and then kind of his case got thrown out to make it the Chicago 7. But so he's not nearly as featured in this movie, but when he is, he's really, really good. He's been dragged into this just because he is the head of the Black Panther Party, and they're trying to find a way to get him. Yeah. And so he is justifiably angry and upset, and he shows that through these outbursts throughout the trial and stuff. And he does a great job of kind of putting that all out there and like wearing his emotion on his sleeve, on his face, like whatever you want to say, that it's all out there. So those three, and then Mark Rylance as William Kunstler as the lawyer for the Chicago 7. He's very impressive as well. So I thought that those four were my favorite. The rest, I thought I didn't really have any issues with anyone. I wouldn't say. I thought they did the job, like they were satisfactory, but didn't really like stand out or anything.
Yeah, I think definitely the strongest links for me were, of course, Yahya. Very, very. I mean, he was perfectly cast as Bobby Seale. I mean, he's the right age, right, build. He looks similar. I tweeted this earlier too. Is like I would love to see a Bobby Seale movie with him in that role, and I would have liked to see more of him. I understand the story isn't about him. He is a part of it, but I thought when he left the story, as it happened in real life, it just kind of took a little bit of the wind out of the sails. I thought that everything that happened in the courtroom with him was electric. Him standing up to the judge and the whole issue with him not having representation was just like
infuriating,
mind-blowingly awful. Yeah. So I thought he just did a really, really good job. And then I would also say Mark Rylance, he was just very, very... Mark Rylance is such a talented actor, and he's very understated. He's not very showy at all. So when he does have little outbursts or he like really like has a strong, something to say, I think that it stands out even more. So he had moments like that. But just his more subtle approach, I thought was really, really strong. He has some funnier lines and he has some witty banter and some good F-bombs that he drops in there. So that was nice to see. I wouldn't be surprised at all if either of them got Oscar nominations. Sacha Baron Cohen, I thought he was funny. I thought he was good. I wasn't okay. So this is one huge issue I have with this. And what I have an issue with Aaron Sorkin in general is that he writes Sacha Baron Cohen's character like not anything like he would be in real life, like what he was in real life, basically. For those of you who don't know, like his character was very much in real life Abby Hoffman. Like he was like, again, like an anarcho-communist. Like he was not in favor of not just political structures in general, but specifically the ones like in the United States and what was going on around this time, where it was a borderline police state. That's something Walter Cronkite said, and they have archival footage of that in the movie. There's one line in particular where he's on the stand and they're asking him if he something about if he supports like America's institution, if he has an issue with their government or something. He says, well, I think it's a great like democratic institution. I just think that it has a lot of bad people in it right now. And like that, I don't know if it's like a direct quote, if that's something Aaron Sorkin made up. I can't imagine that was anything that he actually ever would have said. It just felt very odd to me. And on top of that, you were talking about how there's a pairing with him and Jeremy Strong's character. And Jeremy Strong's character, now, you said they were kind of like bumbling, like hippie type dudes. Now, Jeremy Strong's character actually was a bumbling like idiot. I don't know if that was how the guy was in real life. I don't know if that was like the right. Like,
I caught an egg.
I don't know if that's like the right way to go with him. But Sacha Baron Cohen's character just seems so much more intelligent and so much more capable than Jeremy Strong's character. Jeremy Strong is also doing a terrible accent that kind of dips.
I love his voice. He sounds like Bullwinkle.
Yeah, it's terrible, and it does dip in and out like very noticeably at times. Like when he's yelling or like raising his voice. It felt like he was in a different movie. Like I understand that they were going for like a comic relief to some respect, but I thought Sacha Baron Cohen was funny enough with just his wittiness and the back and forth with Eddie Redmayne's character and Mark Rylance's character, the judge, where you didn't need to make his friend like a stooge, basically, like where he's like, it's like he shouldn't even be there. Like, how is he involved with Sacha Baron Cohen to the extent that he is, where he's like not able to even like, I don't know. It seemed weird to me. I think outside of that, I thought it was fine. Michael Keaton makes a little appearance. That was cool. He was good as usual. Eddie Redmayne. I don't know what to think about Eddie Redmayne. I know he gets a lot of heat in general nowadays. He does an accent. It's very committed. He never has any issues with it. It's weird to hear it coming out of his mouth. I don't know. I think you could have gotten other people to do this role. I'm not sure why he specifically wanted Eddie Redmayne. Frank Langella was very good as the judge as well. That's another person who I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he got an Oscar.
Straight up hate that dude.
Yeah, that's what he was so good. Like he was
sucks.
he was so good at making you mad and like making you hate him and making you just if you're a performer and you're evoking that kind of emotion, I think that says a lot. So I thought he had a strong performance there, even though it was very much over the top and kind of bombastic, like in your face. But that's what the Academy likes to see a lot, I think. So I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being a factor. Overall, there's one last thing I want to say about the ensemble and just the casting in general, and this doesn't, again, accuracy is not the number one thing for me, but it was just weird. I know Abby Hoffman was like 20 years younger than Sacha Baron Cohen is, like,
yeah, that's one thing that I've seen, like, afterwards, like, I saw, like, the chart of, like, real age versus actor age, like, and like you're kind of mentioning, like, oh, well, this isn't what Abby Hoffman was really like, or he was more of this, or I'm wondering if that, like, just my lack of knowledge about this as a whole kind of made me enjoy it more, because I wasn't like, oh, that's not right, or like this isn't accurate. If I was just like, now I'm finding out these things afterwards and I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's different, then I would have thought differently about it. But at the time, like, there weren't any alarms being set off in my brain or anything as I was watching to kind of make me not enjoy it as much.
Right. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he's fine. I think I've come to the conclusion I just don't really care for him that much. I don't know about you. I know he's been, like I said, he's been absent the last few years, but he gets the job done, but he's just not ever exceptional to me, I feel.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
He's been
500 Days of Summer, Inception. Like, those are the two big ones I would say for him in my book, at least. I didn't see Looper, so I don't know. I know he was big and, like, he was the star of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he was annoying in this movie. Not him as an actor, but like the character. Another one that you kind of hate.
Character. Oh my God, yeah.
But yeah, he was serviceable in this. I didn't think he really stood out.
Yeah, the thing is, so this goes back, and that was something I mentioned earlier, was the way one of the issues I've come to realize with Aaron Sorkin, and this is something I've seen in The Newsroom and something I definitely saw in this movie, is like, I don't know if he's just out of touch or if he's like willfully ignorant, or I don't know. Like, going back to what he wrote for Abby Hoffman and the way he decided to portray certain people, or the way. So are we good with spoilers here? I mean, this is something that really happened.
It's a historical event, so I think yes.
Event. Abraham Lincoln is shot. No, but the ending of this movie. We talked about this in the group chat. You didn't mention anything about it, but I have to say this is one of the absolute, like, worst, most laughable endings to a movie that I can remember. So there's Abby Hoffman's on the stand, and he says that really weird thing about, like, being pro, like, democracy and, like, the United States, whatever. And then it fades to black, and you're kind of like, okay, is it over? Like, okay, what's this last scene going to be like? Now, if you've seen The Newsroom, or if you're even familiar with Aaron Sorkin, or, like, you've been on social media or whatever, there's that very famous scene where he, like, has people find out that Osama bin Laden's been killed. And then, like, the newsroom people are on the airplane, and then they, like, report it and announce it to everyone. And they, like, thank the pilots of the airplane and, like, shake their hands and stuff. It's, like, very saccharine, like, very, like, schmaltzy, like not, I don't think melodramatic would even be the right word. It's just very, very, I don't even know how to describe it other than that. But this ending is like that. So Eddie Redmayne's character, he's given the task of all the 7 guys who are still on trial to basically give a final statement. And he's told by the judge, if you give something that's short and respectful and all that, like, it'll help your odds of your sentencing and shit like that. And so Eddie Redmayne, there's this book of names of Vietnam soldiers that have been killed since the trial has started. And this trial goes on for months and months. So there's thousands of soldiers that have been killed. And he decides that he's going to, he's been more pro-establishment. He's very much, like, he has a lot of faith in the democratic structure and the parties and that kind of thing. He's the leader of, like, the Democratic Society or something like that for students. And so he's kind of, you're unsure what he's going to do. And then he decides to stand up and read all the names. He starts reading them off. And then, like, everyone in the courtroom, like, slowly starts to, like, stand up and like starts clapping like really slowly, and then it just rises to everyone clapping and standing. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who has been prosecuting them this entire time, like he's been an asshole to them, and like he's not like a likable guy by any means. And then Aaron Sorkin's like, oh, let's make him likable. So he like for like let's have this little tiny gesture where he stands up like in respect of like I guess the fallen soldiers. And then he looks at his boss, the other lawyer sitting next to him. He's like, stand up, sir. Like, or the boss is like, what do you think you're doing? And he's like, show her some respect or some shit like that. Like, that's what he says to him. And then his boss just like stands up and leaves. And like some other people in the government like stand up and leave. And meanwhile, the judge like literally stands up and is just like, he's like, you can't do that. You're not gonna read all those names. He literally says you're not gonna read those 5,000 names. Like he says that like 3 different times, like over the span of like this 2-minute montage, like sequence that plays out. And so he's slamming his gavel, like he's standing up in his like at his podium or whatever. He's like slamming the gavel, and then it goes into slow motion. Everyone's clapping. It pulls back. There's this long shot. He's standing up there slamming it in slow motion. Everyone's clapping and like Jeremy Strong's character is like raised his arm, and then it reads off like these. The credits kind of come on and it reads the eventual fates of all these people. And it says, well, they all went to prison for 5 years. And then like Sacha Baron Cohen's character like ultimately killed himself. Jeremy Strong's character, who is like a hippie, goes on to be like totally pro-establishment. Like he becomes like a stockbroker. And then gets hit by a car and killed like in Los Angeles or like California later on. And it was just very like, I don't know what what Aaron Sorkin was thinking. Like I couldn't believe it. I don't know how, again, I don't know how you responded to any of that.
I'm going to like at the time I didn't really like think anything of it. I guess I was like, oh, this is, I don't know still if that was like something that they actually did or what, or if it was like dramatized for the movie.
Oh yeah,
or
the standing and clapping.
I'm sure the standing and clapping part was dramatized, but like I assume that that's what they did, like reading the names. But
yeah, I'm not sure.
I didn't really like it. Didn't stick out to me at the time of it, but like now that you're kind of reiterating it and putting the emphasis on it, I could like I'm like oh, yeah, I can see how like you would not be.
It kind of like it almost feels like a parody.
Yeah, it's kind of like the stereotypical like ending, I guess, like the dramatic reading of the names and the
yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, I could see that. Like I said at the time, I'd have to go back and rewatch it to see like whether that changes my opinion now, but I wasn't really like turned off by it upon first viewing. But
yeah, and mind you, at that point, I already hadn't cared for the film really at all. But like,
yeah, and also that's also another thing because it's like for me, I was like into it the whole time, so like I wasn't like cynical by that point, to be like, oh, I can't believe they're really doing this or something like that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that by that point, I was like, okay, this has got to be ending soon, and I wasn't really sure how they were going to wrap up the trial, or I didn't know the actual fate of any of these people. So when they went that route, I was like, okay. And then it just devolves so quickly into like this very schmaltzy conclusion. And I laughed audibly when it said that guy got like hit by a car and killed, because I was just like I was like, okay, this guy completely like switched his stance like politically and like socially, and like I guess became a stockbroker and gave everything up, and then ended up getting hit by a car. And I was just like, I don't even know. I actually, that's like a huge pet peeve of mine too. Like I don't like when movies do that. Biopics, like true story movies in general. Like I don't like when they read a bunch, like show, like either read or show a bunch of stuff about what happens eventually.
Oh, I love that part. That's always the best part.
No, that's like the worst part to me, because it's like, if you wanted to do that, why don't you just do it? Like if that's important to you, why not just put it into the movie? Like we don't, like if I really care that much, I'll just go look it up.
But I think it's not like they could, like this movie's about the trial of the Chicago 7. It's not like they would then just go on and do a 30-minute epilogue of chronicling each character's.
Yeah, so why even tell us what happens?
Stockbroking, like because I mean, if you just spent this movie learning about these real life, like I feel like for anything that you know is like a true story, like you want to know what happens and save that step of like Googling afterwards that you mentioned. Like anytime that I see,
I think it undercuts the drama for me more than anything. I think that's what
we watched. Do you hate the ending of Zodiac? Like that's one that we talked about loving and stuff. Like just recently.
That's one. Well, that's the thing though. If that movie had just ended on that last line where he says, "I'm very sure this is the man who shot me," I would have been perfectly fine with that. Like like I said, I could just look it up. I don't think that hurt that movie in particular. But like one example I'll use. This is just on this tangent now. But like First Man. First Man is all about Neil Armstrong and his wife and like the trials and tribulations of his missions and stuff like that. And then at the end they meet and they're on the glass and they're like looking eye to eye and hand to hand and all that. And then it cuts to black. And that movie does not say anything about like
right. But I think there's a big difference between something like that that's like just a historical event versus like a court case or a mystery or anything like that.
It's about their relationship though. Like if
right,
they
right. But there's not any like this is literally you spend a whole thing about a court case, and with that ending where it's zooming out and they're reading the names, if there wasn't any words, you wouldn't have even known if they went to court, like if they went to prison. Like the whole thing would be unresolved.
That's the funny thing to me though, is because the way he wrote this and the way he directs it, it's like this is like a victorious ending, right? Like this is like a great thing that they're doing, and like they should be like commended. And like I think in the way it's portrayed, it's supposed to send you out like on a high note. You know what I mean? Because they've been through so much and they've gotten to this point and they have like stuck to their guns. And the music in particular that they use is very much like a victorious. Like it's like they just won or like got off, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But instead of if Aaron Sorkin, and this is going back to like the way I feel like he might be out of touch, like his politics in particular, he likes certain things to be a certain way. He could have done this where like, no, this is not a good thing that happened. Like these guys were completely screwed by the government and by the court system, and then they went to prison. And they all went to prison, and some of these guys eventually died. This guy killed himself. This is terrible. Like, this is what happened. And you could have portrayed that. You could have shown them getting their sentencing. You could have shown them going out to prison and being like, look how fucked up the government is. Look at what they've done to, like, suppress people or, like, frame people, essentially. And instead, he, like, treats it like a victory, and then over the top of, like, this music and like the clapping and like almost like this celebratory sense, he says, oh yeah, these guys all went to prison, and then like one guy got hit by a car, and then one guy like killed himself. It just felt like it was like a clash almost. Like it didn't seem to line up with like, I don't know if that was what he was going for or what, but it just left a very strange feeling to me. And I think that if you just approach the story maybe from a different perspective, or if you just directed that differently and decided to end it on a different note, it wouldn't have been that way. And I just, that personally was my feeling about how he decided to do that.
I am on the record as being pro movie. What would you even call this? Like follow, like it's not
movie
like
follow.
I'm putting a poll together for us to tweet out.
Ooh,
to get the vibes of, but I want to have the correct phrasing here of like, it's not a credit. It's like it's like a follow up. It's like, do you like when movies based on true stories end with blank? What would we call this?
I think maybe like follow up title cards or like pictures or something, because sometimes they have actual like images of them later in life or something, or like what happened eventually and things like that. I don't know.
Follow up descriptions of what happened to characters. I mean, that's not really like that's not a catchy little title, but that's the best way to get across our point. So that's going to be up on Twitter for people to vote to see if you're on Team Johnny or Team Zach here. But I guess let's go ahead and before we drag on too long, we're talking about, let's close out here with this. First of all, two things. as a piece of entertainment. So like, I think that this is interesting to me because you said kind of the opposite, that you were bored during this movie.
Yeah.
I think I thought before hearing your opinion that for the most part, whether you like enjoyed the movie like as a piece of filmmaking or not, that you could like acknowledge that it was entertaining and that like it would play well with like large audiences. And like you may still think that second part is true, but like I found this to be super entertaining, and I think that it would be like have like pretty wide appeal to people on Netflix checking this out. Do you have the same? Obviously, you said you were bored, but in general, I guess
it's tough because it is such a heavy and like political and like relevant story. I don't know. I mean, if you want to watch a movie where these guys are just brutalized and like hung out to dry for like 2 hours and then they all go to prison at the end, I mean, I don't know. I was not as enthralled with the dialogue because the entertainment value of this with Aaron Sorkin is the dialogue and like the speaking back and forth and that kind of, those scenes. That stuff didn't hit for me like it usually does with him. So like personally, I don't know if you're going to get much entertainment value out of this movie unless you're like a movie fan or you're really into this story that they're telling. Yeah, I that's my take on it.
I can respect that. I know I watched this with Rebecca and she was not as high on it as I was. So I can see that it kind of it could go either way. I was very into it, like I have previously said. But one more thing I want to touch on is just, we've talked about it a little bit, but what is your full, I guess you don't have to give away the full scope since you're doing the awards radar piece coming soon to the website, but just a quick Oscars rundown. Where do you see this contending? I know I personally put it as like, on my headline was Trial of the Chicago 7 is an immediate Best Picture frontrunner. Like, I think this is the perfect storm of the political environment that we're in, the social justice movements, the accessibility on Netflix, the lack of new movies, just kind of, it's the perfect storm to make a good push for this.
I agree. I said that before I watched the movie. I still think that's accurate. This movie, I mean, that ending is something that Academy voters are going to watch. I think for the most part, especially, they've diversified the voting body, but older, more white people or like traditionalists are going to see this and they're going to be like, wow, yeah, like I feel so good about how this wrapped up. And like, it's very much aimed at that audience. I mean, it's aimed at Aaron Sorkin's audience. Aaron Sorkin himself would love to watch something like this, I think. So, yeah, I think that it certainly has a good shot. I think it'll be in the mix for the bigger awards like, original screenplay and best picture, best director. I would not nominate it. I certainly wouldn't nominate it for best director. I don't think I'd even nominate it for best picture. But yeah, I think it could certainly win best picture. And I think it could certainly be at least nominated for best director. Even with some heavyweights still to come, like Mank and Nomadland's out there now, and One Night in Miami, and some other ones that are coming up.
Well, there you have it from our awards expert himself. Johnny is breaking it down, but that's not all of it because there's a lot more categories out there. So be sure to check out his awards radar piece for all of the odds for Trial of the Chicago 7, for Minari, for what else do you have on there? One Night in Miami.
Yes.
That's going to be
tonight. I'm excited.
That's going to be the big three. I'm worried. Like I was, again, like I said, for that one, I was high on it, but not like in love with it. So I'm interested to see how you feel about that based on our split opinions on this.
Yeah.
But I think this is nice having sort of a difference of opinions here versus kind of being on the same side. That was something Jake and I were typically like on the very same side of things. So it's nice to kind of have a difference. Makes for better discussion.
I almost wish Jake had been on for this one just because.
So you guys could gang up on me, huh?
No, just because no, he's such a big Sorkin fan. Like by far more than I am. So it's I don't know. It's tough. It's tough when your faves let you down. I'll say that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But it makes for a great episode. Makes for a good podcast, good discussion, a lot of good news today. So that's it for Trial of the Chicago 7. That is it for this episode. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it week in and week out. We do it for you guys. You're the reason we do this.
Of course, and we love the support. It's been phenomenal in recent weeks. And if you haven't yet, follow us on Twitter. We got polls very often. We got different types of content, trailers and pictures and things on there. Instagram, TikTok. Give us a like on Facebook. And subscribe to us on YouTube. We post all of the podcasts there if you don't get them from another source. And all these can be found at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to go ahead and subscribe, rate, and drop us a review wherever you get your podcasts. That's on Apple, that's on Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, Google, YouTube, whatever you want to listen on. We are there. Go and follow us, give us a rating, give us a review, help us climb those charts, and make sure you come back next week for a potential quadruple header. I mean, Borat 2, On the Rocks, The Witches, and Rebecca all coming out next week. I don't think we're going to watch all of them. I don't think we're going to review all of them. Potentially, depending on Johnny's Apple TV Plus trial, maybe On the Rocks, maybe Borat 2. I don't think I can convince him to watch The Witches or Rebecca. So
I don't know, man. I'm feeling like I'm definitely going to watch at least 2 of these. So it's either way, we're going to have some good stuff to talk about. So
yeah, for sure. And it gives you guys, the listeners, a wide option to check out before next week. So be sure to go ahead and vote on that poll that we mentioned. Do you like credits at the end of movies that give us the description of each character? And then tune in next week. See you then.